SARS Commissioner Dr. Johnstone Makhubu says he plans to accelerate initiatives started by his predecessor, Edward Kieswetter, including expanding the tax base targeting the illicit economy and improving recovery of tax debt owed to SARS. He also says strong engagement with industry, especially tax practitioners, is going to be some of his priorities. And he joins us now to speak about his vision for the organization. Commissioner, thank you so much for your time and good evening to you. So it's been a few days now at the helm. How has it been?
Thank you very much and greetings to your viewers. It has been a journey that started on a very fast track. On the first, we were already in the office. And yesterday, we were given an opportunity to open one of our service centers in Newtown and interact with taxpayers on the front line. And this suggests that the direction going forward is going to accelerate only. And therefore, we look forward to the journey. And we are privileged, I must say, to be trusted with this responsibility, huge responsibility of running the South African Revenue Service.
And if you were to speak to a lot of South Africans, right, they already have your job description and things that they would like for you to do for them. But I wonder for you, what becomes the first order of business as far as, you know, the work is concerned? I know you've been there, but now in a different form. What are you going to do? What is that number one thing?
Look, for me, it is important that we connect with employees in the organization. Of course, I have been at SARS for almost a decade, but I think in the position of the commissioner, it becomes very critical for me to connect with staff. And that's why yesterday we spent larger part of the day engaging with staff nationally to outline some of the plans that we are working on. I also spent some time connecting with the leadership. But fundamentally, as you said in your intro, what is important for us is to continue the acceleration of modernization. Our modernization agenda will continue to be at the core of the work that we do. And therefore, for me, it's very important that there is continuity between myself and the work that Commissioner Kieswetter had started. I was part of that work in terms of its conceptualization, and I'm confident that we need to continue that trajectory. And not necessarily going to change things for the sake of changing them. So modernization is another area that is very important to me, simply because Commissioner Kieswetter left it at a very ripe stage, and it's important that we don't lose momentum, that we continue in that particular direction. And I'm canvassing entire staff and mobilizing staff to make sure that they are on board with the accelerated modernization. So you'll hear us a lot in the next couple of months talking about accelerating modernization in the eight generational programs that we've spoken about in our white paper. So modernization 3.0 and its acceleration becomes very important for us as we move forward. But of course, there is issues around the tax gap, there's issues around broadening the tax base, as well as making sure that relationally we are sound, especially with industry as well as tax practitioners in the system.
And I wanted to go there because the tax practitioners appear to be high on your agenda. And I wonder what are some of the issues that you're hoping to engage with, especially when it comes to, you know, your interactions with them, because they're quite critical, particularly in the value chain of, you know, interfacing between yourselves and the users ultimately.
So in particular, we speak about tax practitioners because we have the understanding that in the next 5 years, what we want to drive, or what I want to drive directly, is the type of service that we render to the tax-paying community, but more so tax practitioners, because they are the link between ourselves and the taxpayers out there in most instances. And therefore, it is important that the experience that they have with us, whether it be our systems, whether it is about our channels that we open to them, those are supposed to be seamless. And I'm aware, acutely aware, that there is some long way to go in terms of addressing the experience that they have whenever they interact with us. Just as the case point earlier on today, I had to respond on LinkedIn to a number of tax practitioners that were engaging me on a number of issues that they are concerned about that we need to address. And it confirms, at least in my mind, that we need to take this constituency in and understand, listen to them, understand some of their frustrations, and also utilize them as an extension of the tax administration. Because we can only win in this ecosystem if we leverage others in the ecosystem so that we are able to improve the outcomes in our.
You do have, people, for example, who will raise, issues around compliance as far as, cryptocurrency, cross-border, crime is concerned, as well as compliance in that particular regard. Would you say that SARS has the capacity to investigate all the matters that it needs to?
Look, you're correct. All of that falls within the fifth priority that will be significant for me in this administration or in this tenure, which is the fight against illicit trade. Unfortunately, currently we do not have the capacity to be able to fully go after all instances of non-compliance. We currently have 14,525 employees. We think we should be sitting at around 16,600. And we continue to engage with our shareholder ministry to create the capacity. We are very grateful that in a very tight fiscal environment, the minister was able, in the previous tenure of Commissioner Kieswetter, to squeeze out 7.5 billion of the MTF to really say, here's some money, let's see how far SARS can be able to go. And we believe that the 2 trillion that we've been able to deliver does give some confidence that with right investments in SARS, we should be able to see the requisite returns. And we continue to engage with an expectation of creating the capacity that we need. And I'm acutely aware that the fiscal framework is currently under pressure. And we'll continue to have dialogue with our shareholder ministry and others in the ecosystem to find ways of creating that capacity. We need the capacity. There is nothing that is as frustrating as understanding areas of non-compliance and not being capacitated to be able to pursue them. And increasingly, we'll be working with our shareholder ministry to ensure that progressively we move towards enabling SARS to go after those areas of non-compliance.
So as part of your journey, when it comes to the work in SARS, would you say there's been this, appetite or even, understanding that this is an issue that must be dealt with quite a bit of acceleration from, the ministry's part? And I ask this because at times we have these conversations that talk about what still needs to be done and money that needs to be put in certain places, but it seems things are moving at a slower pace. So is there an understanding from the ministry's part that this needs to move with speed?
No, I think generally my sense, you'll recall that I've ran the finances of SARS as its chief officer for finance. I do appreciate the fiscal framework and the pressures that it works within. I think my own assessment is that the very 7.5 billion that we got over the MTF is a signal by the shareholder ministry that indeed we hear you, we are in a tight environment, and increasingly we will invest in SARS. The minister deliberately said 1.5 billion of that 7.5 billion needs to go towards modernization. We know that it's not adequate because we still want to make sure that for instance, in the illicit trade, in the illicit economy, we start to target accessible products. And those will require, as we've seen in the world, that we adopt technology such as track and trace technologies that allows us to differentiate in the market goods that are properly manufactured and accounted for, and goods that have entered the market illicitly. And I am of the view that through dialogue and continued conversations, we will find one another in a very challenging environment where the books have to be back in SARS as a profit center, as well as the expenditure challenges that exist on the expenditure side of the fiscal framework.
And as a final question, then I suppose one of the big things is that, all the plans can be put in place, but if there's still some issues of ethical conduct as far as the tax administration is concerned, all this work would be futile. And I suppose the attention also needs to go towards that as well.
Of course, I think even one person in the tax administration that proved not to be beyond reproach in terms of their ethical conduct, they compromise the trust that is placed upon us as a tax administration. I'm very intent to ensure that we leave no stone unturned when we find those that are acting unethically. Had us going out to the media through media statements to say, where we found instances of a non-compliance and unethical behavior amongst our own employees, we have acted, we have preserved assets, and we are increasingly looking towards making sure that, starting from the leadership at SARS, there is a pledge that I'm putting together where leaders will voluntarily sign into lifestyle audits, sign into making their tax affairs open under certain circumstances. Because if the tax administration cannot be transparent, the tax administration is compromised in terms of holding others accountable, in terms of the transparency and the compliance that we're looking for. Therefore, issues of ethical conduct are high on my agenda, and I am looking forward to rolling out a program of lifestyle audits within the tax administration. And speaking to leadership yesterday, I was quite encouraged that leadership is open to being lifestyle audited because they understand that if the tax administration can be trusted, issues of tax morale would improve. So we are hard at work to ensure that the agenda of ethical conduct within the tax administration is prioritized, that our ethics are beyond reproach.
All right. Commissioner, thank you so much for your time. And as you say, the work has started, so there'll be many knocks on your door, including from us at some point, for you to come into studio. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Appreciate your time. SARS Commissioner Dr. Johnstone Makhubu.